Hello, everyone. This is Adrian Alexander from Free the Slaves, Secretariat to the Caribbean Coalition Against Trafficking in Persons. Today, we are having another episode of Member Spotlight with one of our amazing members, Michelle Abel, who will tell us a bit about herself. But I understand she is a Trinidad and Tobago national. Yes, a
Yes,
bright smile as we hear the name Trinidad and Tobago. All right. And currently living overseas, and she'll tell us a bit about herself and her experience. But welcome, 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 Michelle. I know that you've been
you.
a member of the coalition for a little while, but we didn't get a chance to have a sit down for
No,
this interview until
no,
now. Yeah,
right. No, I think I've been involved with the coalition for over a year now. Um,
right. We would have reached out and so
but
your
yeah,
time, you're such a busy person.
I I think I need to clone myself. But yes, I've had a lot going on, but maybe I can just introduce myself. So I am
Please.
Michelle Abel, and as Adrian so kindly put it, I am from Trinidad born, but I grew up in Canada. So I've spent most of my childhood and adult life in Canada. So, and I migrated as a little girl with my mother. So, yeah, yeah, it's been quite a journey. But I know my roots, and I'm proud of my roots, and I love the work that I'm able to do, not just in North America or Europe, but also to just simply give back to the Caribbean and more importantly to Trinidad as much as I can.
Awesome, Michelle. What
Yes.
is your occupation?
My occupation. So currently, I run a Canadian NGO, which is called Bridge to Future. And I decided that I would open that 3 years ago. Before that, I was just predominantly aligned with other NGOs internationally and in North America. I still am, but I was asked to consider opening my own, and even though I was hesitant, I decided that that was the right step moving forward because of all the work and the experience that I've gathered over the years. So that's basically what I do. I'm involved in policy, research, advocacy. Um, I'm happy that I'm able to speak into various spaces and not just be recognized as someone with lived experience, but I can also speak into many areas such as human trafficking, familial trafficking, all forms of exploitation, intimate partner violence, coercive behaviors. Those are the main key areas of my expertise.
Okay, great. How did you get involved in this? You mentioned lived experience. I don't want to go too deep into that,
That,
but just broadly, what
uh,
made you
sorry.
realize that this is something that you had experienced? Because so many people say that they had a lived experience, but they had no idea that it was trafficking until much later. And that terminology may not have existed or was known to them, but they may have been doing the work in any event, some sort
Yeah.
of connection and so forth. What was your experience?
So clearly, I am a survivor of familial trafficking, and that happened in Canada. And unfortunately, like many, like you just said, I did not realize what it was that was happening, except that it was wrong. And of course, any form of abuse, especially in childhood, it's very difficult for a child to process what is happening or taking place with them, but especially with people that are there to protect you. And that level of betrayal is so damaging um, for children overall. Um, so for me, I grew up seeing my grandparents. So I should preface this that I spent my summers going back to Trinidad and being able to integrate with my family and have those experiences with cousins and stuff like that and just be a kid. But I actually think that I realized at 16, 16 was when I came out with my truth, as I say, to my mom. Um, and I think a light bulb went off in my head because I was in high school and I just recognized that I was different from other kids. The way I thought, the way I looked at things, never dated, never wanted to be close to people, just different patterns and behaviors that I recognized within myself. I wasn't antisocial by any means, but I was very guarded. And so being able to come out and just tell my mother what had been happening within the family and what I was being subjected to since the age of 8 years old was very liberating for me. And, I think it was a natural process because going back to Trinidad, seeing my grandparents, aunts, uncles, we are a very charitable, I would say that, a charitable family. So my grandmother would do feedings and have a kids' day. She would host a kids' day for kids in the village, not just family. So it's something that is embedded in me. And then, of course, in Canada, I watched my mom do the same thing through her career, but we would cook as a little girl and feed people. So my mom enjoyed cooking, and I think that also helped her in adjusting to Canada as well, because we too we didn't have much family here. So, um, but it's just something that I really do believe at 16 I made that decision and to just come out with it and however it was received, which it wasn't received well, um, it's I was able to speak my truth and I knew how important that was.
You've been advocating against human trafficking since a
So since
teen,
then, since
right?
16, so I was in high school and I was with some of my friends were from the Middle East, from the Caribbean, and there were different situations that occurred in high school that some of my closer friends divulged what was going on and in their culture in their home, like expected marriages, arranged marriages. So my parents, both my parents, God bless them, that they were able to step in and also safeguard some of my friends, take them in so they wouldn't end up on the street. And we took care of them. So, like I said, that charitable, just genuine goodness, I grew up with that part. So, apart from the ugly stuff that was happening in my life, that is deeply rooted in who I am.
No, that's great that you had that family support, that your parents were there recognizing that your friends are in danger and willing to step out,
Yes,
especially as migrants into a country and not too familiar with all of the culture and so on. They recognize that they needed to assist your friends. So that's great. Yeah.
yes. I'm so grateful for that. And, you know, um, it's not a part that I really get to speak about much. So it's sort of talking to you now, it just takes me back to those times, but how important it was that my girlfriends had a safe place. And my parents really supported that and nurtured them. And that is incredibly dear to my heart. And I'm so grateful that with everything, I have those experiences with my family.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that is powerful. And you
Yeah, it
mentioned
is.
you that smile, it really brings back pleasant memories.
Yes, yes. I'm grateful. My mom is not with us.
Oh,
Um,
um,
yeah, so it's really, really great memories. And of course, I am a mother too of a daughter. And so just being able to share what her grandmother was like as a person is very important and always has been to me. And now, even with my niece and nephew, I'm able to share some of those really important memories and let them know what kind of person she was. So that's
it's a,
sacred to me. That's really sacred.
it's a
Yeah.
loving legacy. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
And you mentioned that you, before starting Bridge to Future, you worked or were affiliated with other organizations doing similar work to combat
Yeah.
human trafficking. What?
Yes. So maybe I should tell you. So I'm a former banker, not just domestic banking, but I also did international banking. And so through my work, again, the charitable aspect was able to be open to me, and I really flourished there. And it really helped me because I started at 18 in the bank. And yeah, really young, I know. But just being able to be a part of a corporation and then being able to run charitable events to help the less fortunate, I had quite a bit of autonomy in that, so I could decide what events we would host and what that would look like. So preparation was key to me, and I focused on violence against women and impoverished communities, so at-risk children and youths. So that again, all sacred, very important to the kind of person and who I am today. Um, with the organizations through the bank, I had access to various organizations that would align themselves with our bank, and then they would show up to some of the charity events, and I just simply started being me and just talking about, some of my experience, limited very limited, of course, because I was a kid, 18 to 21. I was still trying to figure myself out and trying to find my own footing. So, but apart from that, I basically from that point on dedicated my life to just helping people in whatever capacity, showing up in whichever way that I can, just to be a support. Yeah.
All of those experiences from 18 to 21 and just working in different areas, you decided to establish, as you mentioned, Bridge to Future.
Yes. So I should preface that with I do have an organization that I did open in my 30s when I was in international banking in the Caribbean. But my main focus is my Canadian NGO now, because that's where most of my work comes out from. That's where I'm able to do webinars, write briefs, um, have a say in policy on a government aspect. And as you're aware, and I've said before, it's on an international basis. So I'm I'm quite grateful for everything actually that's happened. And often people will ask me, well, do you regret what happened? And of course there's regret, but I wouldn't change anything. I wouldn't change anything because it makes me who I am today. And it allows me to reach people on a different level. It's not just about the organizations and who runs it. That's not important. That's not what's important. And I think people need to understand that. It's simply trying to reach people where they are, love them, show them grace, show them mercy, and help them in whatever capacity you can so that they can heal and ultimately thrive in their lives. So
It's
that's very
powerful.
important to me.
Give me an idea of how you came up with the name of the organization, please. Bridge to Future.
Yes. Well, honestly, I a lot of names were running through my mind, but I looked at bridging gaps. So I speak about that, bridging gaps. And if you're helping people, well, you're helping them in their present, but you're also setting them up for their future. And honestly, I am a woman of faith, and I think most people know that about me. And I prayed about it, and I knew that that was the name. That was the name. And it's really simple, but so meaningful. But if you look at it, bridge to future,
Correct. You're taking
it is
people
a bridge
from
to
their
future.
past, really, to a
Yeah.
healthier, hopefully
Whole-
trauma-free, but whole.
Wholeness,
Yeah,
people need people like myself and other survivors to help them through, to hold their hands, to guide them, to be an inspiration, to encourage them. And, and even today, I'm so grateful that I have a few people that I can turn to them because it's not easy. It's not an easy job. It's not an easy space to say, I'm going to show up the best way that I can. And I often say this too, that sometimes the nurturer needs to be nurtured.
very
And
true.
I think many times survivors who are advocating, who are heavily involved in the advocacy movement, we forget that we too need to be loved, cared for, and nurtured. So that's
That is
important.
a powerful plug, Michelle. In Free the Slaves and also in the coalition, we've been advocating that people practice self-care,
Yes,
intentional, to be
exactly.
intentional about your self-care. For the very reason that you mentioned, the
Yeah,
saying goes, you cannot pour from an empty cup, right?
yeah,
And a lot of us are doing that because we are responding to the need that we see in others, and
yes,
that compassion drives you. But the
yes,
fact is, you need to be sustaining yourself. You need to be taking the rest. You need to be finding ways to ensure that the trauma that you have suffered is not
mm,
being compounded by the trauma of those that you're assisting,
yes,
and vicariously impacting you to the point where you may experience burnout.
yeah.
Try to ensure that you remember that.
I think we all do. And we all get to that point because when you're dealing with traumatized people and traumatic experiences, it's only natural that you will be triggered. We hold space for each other. And so if you're holding space and you're being authentic, you will automatically feel what that other person feels. And so I can only speak for myself, but I know this in my survivor circle, that many of us, we struggle. We don't sleep well. We neglect ourselves. We forget to eat. Sometimes, some days, I simply forget to eat, and it's like, oh yeah, I didn't eat today. And maybe this is why I'm not feeling optimum, but at the end of the day, I think it's a natural process that we would be impacted by the horrific events that somebody else is going through or has experienced. And I'm big about just being truthful, being authentic. I just put something out recently this week that we have to be willing to speak our truth and stand in our truth. And that's big for me. And so the way I operate, first off, is it truthful? Can I help change this? What can I do? And what are the impacts? Because there's always an impact. And we always hope that it will be a positive impact, but that's not a guarantee, because when you're trying to meet the needs of others, there's no guarantee in this work. You can only give them the tools. You can only tell them what has helped you, but they have to do the work, and they have to be committed to doing the work for themselves as you walk alongside them and support them. But their journey is their individual journey, and we can't do that for anyone else.
Yeah, that's a great point. So is it that Bridge to Future works a lot with survivors of trafficking in Canada?
So I don't just work with exploited individuals. I work in with intimate partner violence, so women that face all forms of abuse. I've done for years, Adrian, frontline work, and I have now had to sort of divert from that a bit, because my primary focus, just in the space that I'm in currently, with all the bills that are happening between Canada, the US, the UK, I've been called upon to look at certain bills. How would they impact? How can they safeguard our women and children in these countries? And so this is an area that I actually flourish in, and I love it. I'm huge on research and using my lived experiences and looking into research. Obviously, there's a natural process in how we can effectively have policies in place to protect the rights and freedoms of women and children predominantly. So that is my primary focus. I do look at projects and involved in projects for men, abused men. But for years, my focus has been on women and children. Yeah.
And that's understandable, as you mentioned, your lived experience in some of those areas, and the data really speaks the need to protect our vulnerable people, and even the
Yeah.
Palermo Protocol speaks to especially women and children so that's great. You mentioned
But
the
it's
US.
so
Mhm.
important. No, sorry if I interrupted.
Oh, that's fine. Go on.
Um, but I recognize how important it is for our men to be accountable, reliable, dependable, and to also support us in our healing journey. And not every space that I walk in, they think that that's important. But ultimately, if we're raising little boys, we all have family members that are males. And so, how can they show up to support us? This is an aspect that I have been delving into, and work that I'm also currently doing. And um, I'm really happy that I can be aligned with male organizations that see the importance of them showing up for us as women. And it's such a huge challenge because sometimes our men simply don't know how to show up for us when we have been abused, when we, have maybe been overlooked in different ways. Um, and sometimes the perception out there, it's like that woman is damaged. No, we're not damaged. No, we're not broken. We may have been at some point in our lives because of what we were experiencing. But why would we subject ourselves to live that way? That is not a life. So, in order to have a proper life and to really live, we need our men to show up for us.
That is so powerful, Michelle. It takes me back to one of the speakers at the Caribbean Anti-Trafficking Conference in July, who was talking about the need to engage men as allies,
Yes,
even at the community level, so that men understand how what they say and do impacts, whether it promotes or it could be an opportunity to resist and build resilience to different forms of trafficking and exploitation and abuse. Yeah, I
yes,
will remember to connect you with that particular speaker. He's also from Trinidad,
great.
maybe there's
Yeah, no,
opportunities that you could look at.
that would be excellent, and I appreciate that. But at the end of the day, sometimes our poor men, they, and I don't mean poor men, but I do, I am sympathetic and empathetic, and even in my own relationships on a personal level now, they simply don't know how to reach us. They don't know what's the right thing to say. And if you have sensitive men already, they they don't know what is right to say. And then there's situations where a man may have never dated a woman that was abused or trafficked. And so they think everything is normal and fine. And then when they get with that woman, then they start seeing cracks in their relationship because they they don't have the knowledge and how to reach that woman. So then that just bleeds through in some of these families. And so this is why we can see, intergenerational trauma, where trauma is just repeated and repeated because nobody's talking about this. And it can simply be, like I said, they just don't know. They don't have the knowledge. But we as women, I believe, also have a deep responsibility in how to teach our men to show up for us. What do I need from that man so that he can actually help me heal and continue my healing journey and allow us to have a beautiful relationship? Doesn't mean it's guaranteed, but at least you can be able to share those tools, and people need to be able to communicate properly.
That reminds me of what was said recently by a survivor leader who indicated that, in having a relationship with someone based on her own lived experience, she understands the value of therapy, of
Yeah.
counseling, you know.
Yes.
And so if she's going to have a relationship with someone who is averse to therapy and to counseling, she knows that that's not going to work because she's still, after whatever number of years, is working through the trauma of
Yeah.
what had happened to her. And so that person needs to be open to having a third party there in their lives, providing support to both of them, because he
Yeah.
would need support as well as she would need support.
Absolutely. And I think we get into some mindsets. There are certain individuals that believe, okay, I've put in the work 2 years now, I'm good, and I'm ready to move on.
Mhm.
No, that's absolutely wrong in my mind. I believe that that's a fallacy. Okay. And I think every single day you have to put in the work. I'm not saying that you can't relax in the space that you're in, or where your journey is at. But I have said in the past years that it feels like a lifelong sentence. The abuse that's happened, it is a lifelong sentence, but that does not mean that it should hinder your life. It should hinder your growth. It should hinder, what your future holds for you. Absolutely not. So I really do believe that it's important that people recognize that your healing is lifelong. And it's how you, I think it's the kind or the quality of life that some people may not always recognize. And I think, like I said, there are people that believe I've done the work, it's a couple years and I'm good. Yes, you're better than where you were, absolutely. But for me personally, I'm 15 years into my healing, and that took a lot. It really took a lot, and doing this work in the process, you have to keep yourself in check. You must, because we have that sorry, that responsibility that if you are not showing up authentically and in a healthy mindset, you can inherently do damage to somebody else.
That is such an important point, Michelle. This feels like and inspiring therapeutics that you hear. But it's almost as though you were involved in conversations I've been having with other people for the past few weeks, you know. So there's a lot of confirmation here. But I know you're super busy, so I don't want to take too much
No,
time. We
no,
have to
yeah,
revisit and have a further conversation. But I just want
yes,
to close off with
yeah.
getting a sense of what do you think are some of the main accomplishments that Bridge to Future has had over the last 3 years that it's been in existence.
Well, my work with the UN Women and the CSW, I'm very proud of that because I've been able to co-host webinars, um, and I've also attended UN meetings. So that's very near and dear to my heart. I also submit briefs on different policies again. Um, so I'm just so grateful that I've been able to have that as an accomplishment for women and girls.
And those briefs,
The,
Michelle, are to the UN and the CSW as well, or in other
yes,
spaces too.
yeah, and in other spaces as well. So,
Mhm.
and that's in organizations or parliament, because my message doesn't change that much. I'm pretty clear about where I stand on policy and protections of women and girls. Um, I think the next accomplishment I would say is just being able to be so heavily involved in policy on a governmental level. And that's very rewarding to me because it makes me feel that I have a voice, and my voice is important and it's recognized. And I'm truly thankful for that. Um, doesn't mean that the bills necessarily reflect exactly how we want, but there's no law out there that's flawless. Nothing is flawless. But I think as long as your key points are made, that's all I can hope for.
What
And
is one such bill that comes to mind that you would have made a contribution to at least improving it, even though, as you said, nothing is flawless?
well, we have one currently, that has been revamped. And right now we are working on that, but it's to protect women and girls on online platforms. Also, Bridge to Future is involved in two projects, two of which we created, and we're looking to launch that. But I would like one of them to come into law, and one is what I mentioned in my article with the MLI. So I was really happy and to be able to speak about that.
MLI, just
McDonald Laurier Institute.
okay,
I
great.
believe I did submit the article to you
Right, that will be published in our newsletter.
in
Great.
August. Yes.
Lovely.
Um, and the next thing that Bridge to Future was involved in was the Take It Down Act, which was signed into law in May by President Trump and First Lady Melania. And so I had the opportunity to be invited to the White House to witness the signing of that law. And sorry, it makes me a bit emotional because I was able to speak into that in the US. And we are looking to implement something similar. So in past years, I've I have discussed in briefs and webinars that um, we need to hold these platforms accountable. And, we should be looking at going after them financially, and it is criminal what is happening. So there should be some sort of imprisonment, but you work with what you have, and there are so many bills that Canada has that are great, but what does it matter truly if you have all the laws and they're not being implemented? And each day, a girl here in Canada is being exploited and sold and abused on any level. So for me, that is personal momentum to do better, work harder, just to ensure that we can get things in a way that we can be proud as citizens, as women survivors, knowing that for our future generations, they will be protected. So those are the key things that Bridge to Future has done. And I think you see and hear my passion.
Definitely.
And I am just, like I will continue to say, I am simply grateful and thankful for all that God has blessed me with. And the mere fact that I'm here today and I'm whole, I'm healthy, and my life is on a really positive path, I give that glory to my God.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Michelle. I mean, I really want to sit down with you again and have some conversations, especially around, like what's happening in Canada, Canada being a member of the Commonwealth, as so
Yes,
many of our Caribbean territories are, in the run up to the Commonwealth heads of government meeting next year, God willing, in
yes,
the Caribbean, so we want to have some of those discussions, and see in terms of like the coalition, and being able to bring your experiences and your strengths as a Caribbean woman living in Canada and having impact on some of these pieces of legislation. And I remember
yes,
when we were chatting to try to like schedule today, you mentioned that you were going to be part of something for, was it as it was a national day for missing and murdered in Indigenous
yes. So
women. Yeah,
it's truth and
Truth and
reconciliation.
Recon.
So that is for our Indigenous communities. And, you know, they are a group of women that in Canada, they make up more than 50% of murdered, missing, exploited. And, um, most people don't know, but my daughter is part Indigenous because of her dad and his roots. And so these are all aspects that are very near and dear to my heart. And again, it is so important to have a voice and to evoke change, but positive change.
Yes.
And, how can we really make a difference if either individuals or our government even is trying to silence us through different legislation? Because that also works backwards too for us, right? So,
Mhm.
um, but my heart just goes out to our indigenous communities, and they have suffered tremendously, tremendously. Yeah.
No, thanks so much for sitting down with me today, Michelle. It's been long overdue, but it's a
Yeah.
great opportunity to learn a bit about Michelle and also to learn a bit about the work of Bridge to Future. And I love that name, Bridge to Future.
Thank you
Yeah.
so. Thank you. I really appreciate you reaching out and suggesting that we did this. So, and please feel free. Let's have the conversations because changes need to happen in Trinidad. And
Correct. Be them.
legislation for any of us that are influential in influencing these laws, I think we have to be involved and we have to be proactive, because I don't need to tell you. I see the news. I do run programs through my ministry in Trinidad, and then individuals that work alongside me in the Caribbean through Bridge to Future. And what we are seeing, the amount of girls and children that are missing, women that are being exploited on any level, is heartbreaking. And you know what? We can do better.
Yes.
Can do better.
I
Yeah.
totally agree with you, Michelle. Yeah. So thanks
At
again,
least
and we will
that.
catch up. We will catch up. All right. And
All
viewers,
right.
thank you so much for tuning in to this episode of Member Spotlight. I've been chatting with Michelle Abel from Bridge to Future. And Michelle, if someone wants to get in touch with you and your organization, what is an email address that they can reach you?
So it's Michelle at bridgetofuture.ca.
And that is BRIDGE, the number two,
And
and
future.
future. Awesome. Bridge
Yeah.
number two, future, all one word, and
Yeah.
.ca, not .com, because remember, people,
We're in
is
Canada.
based in Canada. Yes.
Right. But feel free. If you put it out, I would appreciate anybody reaching out, and if I can help in any way, shape, or form, I'm happy to do so.
Awesome.
All
Thank
right.
you again, Michelle. Have
Oh,
a
thank
lovely day. Okay.
you. It was really great to chat with you. Thank you so much for your time.
My pleasure.
Okay, bye.